Agree.
A lot of other questions in the chat. Should we just start
Yeah,
taking them on?
sure. Yeah. We can jump down to this one about virtual open houses. Someone's asking kind of what's the best way to make the most of those events? What do you intend for us to get out of those, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the person. You can get a lot of information just from a lot of our websites. I think we've all invested a lot of time into updating everything since the pandemic, which is the one good thing that came out of the pandemic. The problem is, we all present the information through our own lens, right? So you're going to have to figure out whether there's anything else that is important to you. And so it's really good to have, again, figure out what's important to you, write out some questions, make sure you consistently look for that information. Um, and ask whatever it is that's important to you. But again, don't be afraid to ask what's important to you. Don't be afraid to look for information that's pertinent to you outside of those. It's a virtual open house is very much just a taste, an introduction. It's by no means, I think, meant to be a full picture of our programs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Definitely bring a list of questions about things that are important to you. Kind of thinking about that in advance can be really helpful as you go into the interview season as well. And if you have the opportunity to meet with the residents during the open houses, that is definitely gold. Any opportunity that you have, whether it's that or as Dr. Onofre said, the night before the interviews, whenever you're kind of alone with residents, that is absolutely golden time because you'll get a lot of your questions answered, but also get a lot of the sense kind of that gut feeling. It's there's no real algorithm when you're putting together your rank list. A lot of it really does kind of come down to where do I feel like I belong, and you'll get, I think the most of that in interacting with the residents.
Yeah, I agree completely. Bring your questions and just observe how the residents, and if there are residents and faculty on the open house, how they're interacting with one another. I think will give you a sense of the culture and the community and the program. But I agree. It's just a taste. It's the appetizer to interview season.
You guys said it all. So. Okay. Another question that we've gotten in the last couple panels as well is a question about signals. If you would want to talk about each panelist, maybe kind of how your program views signals, as well as geographic signals and how you kind of use those for each applicant.
I can start. I think that every year when we have our PD meeting, we talk about the signals, the number that we have, and what it means to every program. I think it's always kind of different from every program. So for a small new program, it does mean a lot when we see them that, oh, like, why are you interested in our program? For example, amongst all the other ones here in this region or even in our state. So it does mean a lot for us. Geographic preferences, that just kind of tells us, whether or not you have a goal of being somewhere. But by and large, signals for our program matter a lot more. And so I don't want to speak for the other programs in terms of what it means to them, but I'm sure the larger programs might be a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree. There's always a lot of debate about how many signals we should have. Last year, we increased the number of signals from 3 to 8, and are keeping 8 signals again this year for adult neurology. I think the data shows that the top tier programs really get a ton of signals to the point that they're almost not that helpful. Whereas smaller programs, particularly if they're in a region that you're not from, will see a signal from you as very meaningful. So I think, my advice regarding signaling is to use them wisely. Don't leave them on the table. I think you should signal sincerely to programs that you want to go to. And I think as time goes on, as we get more experience and maybe adjust the number or the tiering of signals moving forward, it might be more helpful. But I think from the applicant's perspective, I think it's an opportunity to sort of demonstrate to programs that you're really interested in them. And so, although it's optional, I always tell applicants, not to let that opportunity go by.
Yeah, I agree with everyone. I think we're all still struggling a little bit on the program director side to know exactly how to use this information. For us, it's one portion of our holistic review. It's one checkbox out of many. And so, if it truly came down to a tiebreaker between somebody who signaled and somebody who didn't, that might break the tie, but it's not, we've matched people who didn't signal us and, vice versa and all of that. I would say, if you have already kind of declared your interest or the program is already aware of you, certainly for your home program, they should know you well. If you've done an away rotation, you're already on their radar, really reserve the signals, or, utilize them strategically, especially if you're looking at a geographic area that's not close by. I find that most helpful when I get an application from like the University of Washington or something, clear across the country, where I might think, okay, this person, maybe is just applying everywhere and doesn't really have an interest in UF. But if I see that they've used one of their 8 signals to, signal an interest in my program, then that catches my eye out of an applicant that I might not have noticed otherwise.
I totally agree with what everyone just said. And exactly that's my thinking with what Dr. Wilson just said. If I don't know that you're in my regular catchment area, I'm less likely to think that it's a serious application to University of Utah. So if you have at least a geographical preference or a signal, then I'm more likely to use that to kind of select from a pool of similar candidates. But just as Dr. Wilson said, we have matched people who did not signal necessarily. So it's not an absolute, but as we all get more and more applications, it's really helpful to use either your geographical preference or your signal.
Okay. There's a couple questions about, I think what kind of boils down to what are you looking for in an applicant? What kind of leadership qualities, experiences, background, um, are you really looking for when you read an application?
All hesitating here because that's a really challenging question. So most programs these days do a holistic review, meaning that you have a whole, kind of mental spreadsheet of things that you're looking for. And, the specific metrics for each individual program should be somewhere, usually they're on a website. But, as you're kind of looking through program websites, they will give you an indication of, whether you're sort of the type of applicant, look for people who look like you or are interested in the types of things that you're doing and what you have done in the past. And that's, kind of a good way to see if you would fit in well within that local culture.
Yeah, I think the goal of holistic review is to for us as programs to try to find applicants whose like values and goals align with our program's, sort of mission or value statement. So I think, as you're applying, you should be doing the same, thinking about, as Dr. Onofre said, like what is most important to you, what your goals are for residency training, and then look for a place whose sort of values align with yours and with your goals. Yeah.
Okay, there's another question I think kind of along the same lines, that's gotten some reactions. When reviewing a personal statement, do you prefer it to reinforce the CV and MSPE by kind of narrating that applicant's medical journey? Or do you find it more compelling when it highlights the individual, beyond medicine and kind of their personality and values?
I can start with that because I have strong feelings about it. I can read your CV and I will read your CV very carefully. We're all neurologists, so we're all very detail oriented. So we will pay attention. But if you really want to stand out, it's much more valuable to tell me what you bring in addition to your CV that was going to make you a fantastic neurologist, a great colleague. What was it about your journey to medicine that was really, or like to neurology that was really impactful? That tells me a lot more than just your CV.
Yeah, I agree completely. Through your CV, the experiences, and even in the letters of recommendation, we will hear a lot in your application about all that you've accomplished. The personal statement is really the only place where we get to hear your voice and your story. And so I want to hear, what is your why? What motivates you? What are your goals? Why do you love neurology? And what are you, going to bring to the program?
Yeah, kind of like lifts you out of the application, like brings sort of a person to it. Since, we're reading, hundreds of applications, it really helps me. Oh, yeah, this is a person that, loved to do this or something like that, and outside of the CV thing. Obviously, if there's something on the CV that really, pointed you in that direction and you want to expand on it, you can definitely talk about it.
Yeah, I completely agree with everyone. Definitely take advantage of this opportunity to individualize yourself because, I don't know how many applications we've all read about the person who, read Oliver Sacks back in high school, and that was their journey into neurology, and everything just starts to sound very, very similar after a while. So definitely the more unique you can make it, the better.
And the more personal. And I love Dr. Wong's description of like it lifts you out. I think that's what you're looking for. But that doesn't mean you have to have a literary masterpiece. But if it's personal, it is more memorable. So,
Yeah, I've read some fairly like I don't know where this went. So if you're making us guess too much, then my head might be spinning.
Okay. Couple questions also about some logistics, I guess. Wondering if there's a specific cutoff for years since graduation or a minimum step two score requirement. Kind of along the same lines, wondering about if a good step three score would improve an overall balanced application.
We don't really have a cutoff, in terms of a minimum score. I would say like if you pass, that's good, right? Um, Step three scores, it's kind of the same thing. Whether or not you pass, that's kind of the bigger deal for me. I don't think most programs have nowadays, since step one is pass fail, have like a number that you must get past. Probably in the setting of like if you have a couple applicants that are like neck and neck in the same, then it possibly could be a tiebreaker. But even then, for me, it's like, okay, you took a standardized test and you did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think most programs have moved away from cutoffs. I think more and more we're getting less sort of numerical data. Many medical schools, even clerkships are pass fail now. So we're not looking at grades. So I would say it's made the other aspects of that application more critical and placed less value on things like step scores.
Yeah, I would just say, it's one data point out of many, and certainly, even a failure in somebody who otherwise is a stellar applicant, would not be an absolute hard pass. So, it's one piece of information. Obviously, the better you do, the better for yourself, but it's not a hard stop.
Okay. There was a question about um, how your program considers VSLO opportunities if, for example, an applicant didn't do a VSLO, will that kind of hinder their application? Or I guess, how does your program view applicants that did a away rotation with you?
Yeah, so I think we're all very aware that not everybody who wants to come do a sub-I at our program has the resources or opportunity to do so. And so I think, doing a sub-I, I think, is more for your benefit as a student to have an opportunity to see an institution and a program and sort of get up close in person and get to know the residents and the culture there. But I very specifically go out of my way not to have like one-on-one, like almost pre-interview meetings with sub-Is when they visit. I'm not dodging them in the hallway or anything. I'm friendly and welcoming, but I'm very much aware that there are many people who could not be there that maybe had wanted to be there. And so I don't think it's something that we necessarily would hold against you, like if you did not do a sub-I here, right? So I think we understand that's a very limited resource and not something that everybody has opportunity or access to.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, for example, at our institution this year, we're switching curricula for our medical school students. So we don't have space for sub-Is, and we've had to turn away all of our sub-I applications this year, which is very sad. So I, even before, I never truly like thought about it twice, but now I'm even more mindful about that, and I'm really not going to look at it as much this year.
Yep, we're in the exact same boat at UF. We have 2 years worth of clerkship students simultaneously as we transition our curriculum. So we don't have any external rotators, although we would love to.
Same. We have very few, and I suppose our home institution MS4s get a little bit more preference on rotating with us if they want to, but slots are few.
Okay, thank you. Um, Another question, kind of in general about the challenges with visa processing in this last cycle and this upcoming cycle, and how programs are kind of approaching IMG applicants and recruitment this year.
And that is a great question. And I don't think one that any of us have a good answer for. I think we know, there are so many additional hurdles for IMGs to coming to do their training here in the US. Um, and the delays and visa processing issues this year, I think were just added to that. I think I saw another question in the chat about ECFMG certification. I do think that, that is essential. We're, as has been mentioned from our perspective as program directors, we're reviewing hundreds of applications and we have limited interview spots. And so if you are an IMG and you're not ECFMG certified, then we're taking a big risk uh, by offering an interview and ranking a candidate who might not end up being able to come to our program. I think from the applicant perspective, uh, yeah, just to say that I understand that it's a huge barrier and the barriers only seem to be getting taller. And I'm sorry about that. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has a good answer for that.
Unfortunately, I think you're spot on. You know, if you don't have that certification, it's really hard to know if the person will be able to match. So that's kind of where we are as well.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are a lot of variables there and wild cards. At least in terms of the applicant screening, I don't intend to do anything differently from what I've done in years past. And I'm hopeful that when it comes time for the rank list, that we'll be able to, continue to offer IMG spots as we have historically. And I'm sorry that this is happening. Yeah, it really is unfortunate.
Okay, next question. How do your programs kind of balance the clinical requirements and research opportunities, teaching with resident wellness and well-being?
I'll go ahead and take that one, I guess, to start. So uh, I think, like many programs, we have, a wellness chair among our residents and a resident wellness committee and many initiatives to promote well-being within our program. But I think really the key to sort of that balance is, I think when you're working in a team environment where everybody is sort of committed to the same goals of caring for patients and curious about learning neurology and working together. Coming into the work every day alongside your colleagues is they also become your friends. And so I don't think work is cannot be also part of your well-being. So I think having a good learning environment and culture in the program can help promote that. I also think a lot of programs, historically training was very inpatient based. I think more programs have shifted to incorporate more elective and outpatient experiences to balance that. In our program, we have a 4+2 schedule where you have 2 weeks of outpatient for every 4 weeks of inpatient. And so sort of structurally trying to build in sort of some balance in the workload, and also a lot of elective opportunities for people to explore their passion. Um, so yeah, I think you'll find that you can be working hard and also having fun at work, and that can help support your well-being in residency.
Yeah, and just to echo what Dr. Keener is saying, I think you absolutely should invest the time in creating those bonds with your coworkers because, they really are, you know, one of the most important longitudinal relationships you will have in your life. I still talk to my former co-residents. They're wonderful people. And we supported each other for 4 years, and I am incredibly grateful that I had them by my side. And then to add to what we do, I think what Dr. Wilson said, we talk about wellness and we talk about what's important, and we talk with our residents about what it is that they're thinking about wellness and how we can help them support. I think one of the things that I've learned is that I don't necessarily know all of the things that will support my residents. So that's why I really want them to tell me how to help them. One of the things that came out of our residents' idea box was a resident retreat. So we actually kicked the residents out of the hospital for a day and a half. We cover all the services, and it's actually become not only a really great source of wellness for the residents, but we, the attendings, get to bond during that time as well. So there's many, many different ways to achieve wellness. And I'm sure that my answer today will be different 3 years from now because we'll have a different group of people.
Yeah, we do something similar. I have monthly meetings with the residents of just myself and them, and they kind of just either unload on me or tell me what they need. And we just kind of adjust according to that because wellness is very different for everyone. We do try to promote things. Like I said, we try not to overbalance service, so we have caps for certain teams. We do have it used to be a quarterly happy hour, but now our new wellness share is almost turning into like a monthly happy hour. Our hospital does offer funding for that, and so they gather a lot and hang out a lot, and so I can start seeing that bond forming with them, and yeah, it's leaning on each other. I don't tell them like you must rely on each other to get the residency. It just kind of happens organically if you provide the right environment for that within your program, and so I think all four of us probably do that to a very good extent.
Yeah, I'll echo what my colleague said. A lot of it is really just based on resident feedback and the conversations that we have on a weekly basis. They have a lot of input into the overall structure. For example, recently we kind of completely switched around the neuro ICU experience, based on that feedback and to provide more outpatient opportunities. So, I think just look for programs that are responsive to your needs. Obviously, we can't, change everything and, completely switch the curriculum around on a daily basis. But when multiple people come forward and say, something needs to change, then it's important that the programs are listening and responsive.
Okay, thank you. Another question that got some traction is about the single impactful experience section and how to know if you should fill it out or if you should respond to that section versus list that experience in one of the 10 experiences.
I think it depends, basically. Like it's not like a one size fits all answer for me, at least. Like I said, that can be a really good place to explain if something is an area of deficiency or if you struggle with something in particular. But I've also seen, really impactful things that were very positive that someone put in there. But you can also leave it blank. I don't deduct points, so I don't like I would encourage you not to use it if you don't need to, but if you want to share, you have something to share or want something to share, definitely use it, but don't obsess about it.
Yeah, I think that that section is optional in the ARAS application. So I would say um, there was a comment earlier about addressing any like red flags or deficiencies in your application. I often see people use that to really sort of flip that and take an opportunity to talk about their resilience in the face, of a setback or something like that. So I would say, don't put something there just because you feel like you have to, but I think if there is something that really uh, you know, that you think really sort of fits that section, then to tell us about it. It's a sort of another opportunity for us to get to know you better.
Okay, thank you. I think we're getting down to the last couple questions here. There's another one about how much weight you put on an applicant's background in neuroscience, either in undergrad, research, or, as opposed to an applicant that had neurology exposure later in medical school, and if there's any sort of weight that you put on that.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Each you have your own individual journey, and if you were, looking at another specialty originally and did research in that area, or had experiences in that area, it's not uncommon that people, will list that they were, in the president of whatever, the sign equivalent was for that specialty. So I think just kind of showing your own individual journey and that you were engaged, with something else in the past. The engagement is the important thing, not necessarily the journey, to neurology.
Yeah, I think this is where the personal statement again gives you that opportunity to describe what drew you to neurology, whether it was early, in undergrad research or in your medical school clerkship that you first discovered your passion. I think, sort of to describe that story is what's more important. And, I think we all know there are some medical schools where neurology is not even a required clerkship. And so we welcome you all once you find your love for the brain, whether it be early on or later in the game. Please come to neurology.
I mean that I think maybe the person Nathan asking this question is maybe possibly a little concerned about like applicants that like, oh, I did neuroscience in undergrad, so I had like a ton of papers, I went to all the conferences and stuff. But like Dr. Keener said, that's where your personal statement comes in. You tell us your journey of why you're there, so we'll know like, well, this is why they didn't have 18 million publications because they found it later on. But that's, building that persona in your application with the statement.
Okay, thank you. Um, I think questions are slowing down in the chat, but I wanted to give all the panelists a chance to give any parting advice or just general advice for people applying to neurology residency this cycle or in the future, and anything else you wanted to say.
Be yourself. This is as much us trying to recruit you to our program as it is, the other way around. And so, you don't want to end up somewhere that you don't belong or you don't share the same values. And so if you are yourself, you will find the right program. Hopefully, we'll find the right program that fits you, as opposed to putting on a different persona, trying to be somebody else that you're not, and you end up with a program that like this is not, the environment that I was supposed to be. And then on the same side, when you're making your rank list, rank the places that you can see yourself living in and being happy in, as opposed to just ranking for the sake of ranking, because that can conversely also put you in a pretty bad spot. So, um, but yeah, we're all very friendly. I mean, every year at AAN, we all see each other and we're smiling for the most part. So we're very happy to welcome you into our world.
Yeah, I agree with just being authentic and your true self. I'll also add my advice to enjoy the process. I think at the outside of today's webinar, we talked about how much we enjoy sort of recruitment season and meeting all of you. It's really invigorating and inspiring to see the future of neurology. But from your perspective as well, it's an opportunity to meet one another on the interview trail, to share your passion with other like-minded people, right? We all love neurology, so you'll have some really great questions. You'll meet residents from all different programs, applicants from all over the world. So try to enjoy the process, because even if you don't end up matching at a program, we'll remember you. And years later, when you're applying to fellowship or maybe even looking for a job, neurology is a small community and we embrace you once you're in, so welcome to the community and enjoy the process.
That's exactly perfect advice. We've actually had, I think, I don't remember, like maybe 4 fellows in the last few years that we had interview for residency, and they came back to us for fellowship. And they hadn't done residency at our program, but they remembered the program. And so it's always fun to see the journey and how they've grown and how, like what path they took to come back to us for fellowship. Um, and I really wanted to echo what was said earlier about making sure that you put on your most authentic self, just to make sure that, again, you end up at a place that's congruent with what you want. It's also my, personal aim during interview season to put out as honest of an image as I can to our applicants, because I really want them to know what it is they're getting from me when they come here for residency. So I really remind everyone to ask all of their important questions, and not to be afraid to ask them even during the interview or after. I really want to honestly tell you what it is we have to offer so that you can make the best decision for you. Because if you make the best decision for you, you're actually doing me a favor, because you're going to come here and you're going to be, a happy member of our team, and I can then help you in your career aspirations. I don't want you to come here and be unhappy with, the resources we have, or the mentorship, or the career path. The mood of the residency affects all of us. And when we have happy residents, honestly, the whole department is just functioning really, really well. So we're very invested in making sure that our residents are happy.
Yeah, I'll echo exactly what, my colleague said. It's the interview is definitely a bi-directional process, so make good use of it. Think about what you want to get out of residency and what you value in advance. Come in prepared with questions, and ask them of literally everybody that you meet. Definitely take advantage of every opportunity you have to spend time with the residents, especially if it's one-on-one, kind of away from program leadership. That's a perfect time to get a good vibe check. And make strategic use of the second looks. So second looks are entirely there for your benefit. It does not affect our rank lists at all. It's supposed to be something that's completely separate from that. So if you're still trying to decide between a couple of different programs, that is a good way to kind of really get that last gut check in about where do I fit, because exactly as my colleague said, we want this to be the right fit for you as well. That will be the best way to have a great 4 years of residency on both sides.
All right. Thank you. I think that about wraps it up. I'll go ahead and share our last slide here just in case anyone wants to check out our social media or has any questions, feel free to email us. But thank you so much to all our panelists for sharing all your wisdom and answering all our questions. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much to everyone that joined tonight. Good luck, everyone, and have a good night.